If you don't go weak at the knees at the very sight of an RS6, I don't know who you are anymore. You've changed, and it's not for the better.
Before I start ragging on this car, full disclosure, I love these things and I would happily have one in a heartbeat. However, I am a mechanic, so I can justify it.
The second you flex that right foot, Jesus Christ. Okay, let's just start by saying, I'm going to do my best to give this thing a fair and unbiased review, but you need to understand the Audi RS6 is one of my all-time favourite cars. Even just the concept of an ultra practical station wagon with supercar levels of performance is more satisfying to me than many of my previous relationships. However, as outrageously appealing as these are, and this hurts me to say, they're not perfect. They are guilty of a few common issues. So how about we take you through what you need to watch out for? How about we show you how they're aging, what they're like to drive and live with, and answer the question once and for all, should you buy a used Audi RS6? But just in case you've woken up from an extremely long coma, here are the critical facts that you need to know. The flagship of the A6 range, performance-focused RS6, has been rocking our world since the early 2000s. But in this video, we're just going to be focusing on the third installment, which can be split into pre or post-update iterations. This means they're all packing a 4-litre twin-turbo V8 available in 2 states of tune. The transmission will be an 8-speed Tiptronic Auto with quattro all-wheel drive. And locally, there have been 2 trim specs available with a host of other option packs as well. Plus, being an Audi, there was the possibility of a host of optional extras like larger 21-inch wheels and a panoramic sunroof. And you might want to avoid the panoramic sunroof if you can, and we'll explain why when we get into what goes wrong with the exterior. Now, obviously there's a whole bunch of other specific details about the RS6, and if you do need all of those details, head to ReDriven.com and check out the free RS6 cheat sheet. It's basically the ultimate used RS6 buyer's guide, and it's going to answer all of your questions. But back to the subject of avoiding things, if you bought one of these brand new, you might want to avoid the next few seconds of the video. Brand new here in Australia, these were asking anywhere from about $230,000 to $250,000. However, values have plummeted. Currently, they're ranging anywhere from $80,000 to about $150,000 at the absolute most. We know that might sound like the deal of the century, but before you go racing out to buy one, we do need to cover off the common issues. Let's start with the exterior. First up, quite a few owners mentioned that the fuel filler cap will refuse to open or sometimes just won't lock. And then there are the random sporadic electronic issues, things like lights doing weird things, door locks and keyless entry not working, power windows playing up, parking sensors not detecting obstacles. However, interestingly, when you trawl through the owners groups and forums, it seems that the RS6 suffers far fewer electronic gremlins than the A6 that the car's based on. Next up, the 21-inch rims, they look fantastic, but apparently they're more susceptible to damage compared to the 20-inch rims. Plus, the OEM replacements are outrageously expensive. Also, thanks to the lower profile rubber required for the 21 inches, that impacts the ride quality as well. Also, owners of the earlier iterations complained about brake vibration. The issue here is, let's say you have a spirited drive and you're hammering on the brakes all the time and then you pull up to traffic. If you keep your foot on the brake, that can warp the disc and just result in vibrations. It's no fun. Also, and this one seems to be more prevalent on the earlier models as well, the holes on the discs, they can form tiny little cracks around the actual hole. Again, the problem here is the OEM replacements are ridiculously expensive. There are aftermarket options that could save you some money and they do perform quite well, but just do your homework because, you know, it's a big heavy car. You want it to stop properly. Also, if you're tempted to buy one of these with the optional ceramic brakes fitted, just be aware that replacement ceramic brakes, they can cost in excess of $15,000 to replace. Now, models fitted with air suspension, yes, when this stuff works properly, the ride quality is absolutely superb. The problem is some owners of earlier or higher kilometre examples are finding that the rubber seals are starting to deteriorate. Also, primarily in cold and wet environments, there can be issues with moisture getting into the entire system, and this can play havoc with the compressors. And then on cars fitted with the DRC suspension, that's the traditional spring with the electronically controlled damper unit, these dampers are beginning to leak, and again, like many Audi OEM parts, they are hugely expensive to replace. Actually, quite a few of the owners we spoke to are getting rid of the Audi suspension and replacing it with really high quality aftermarket parts, and they're saying that the ride quality is fantastic, they handle great, and is a lot cheaper. Also, on the brakes and tyres and suspension and general consumables, yes, it's a high performance car, but it weighs so much, it's going to have an appetite for these consumables. Can your budget afford that? Speaking of your budget being able to handle things, Charlie that owns this car had an issue where a stone took out one of the headlights. Guess how much it was to replace the headlight with fitting and calibration? Over $10,000. Luckily his insurance covered that, so if you are buying one of these, yeah, make sure your insurance is up to scratch. Something else to watch out for on the exterior of these, and this seems to be a pretty common issue across loads of different Volkswagen Group models, are issues with the drainage holes getting clogged up. The problem here is, if they clog, the water will find its way into the deep dark recesses of the car, generally into the footwells of the interior, but sometimes it will make its way via electronics, and that can cause all sorts of issues. But one of the big issues with specifically the RS6 is the cassette that basically holds the panoramic sunroof. These are renowned to leak. You've got to get this sorted out. The problem is a replacement OEM part is all of the thousands of dollars. If you don't get it sorted out, again, it can just create all sorts of electrical issues. Get it sorted. Now, the RS6 being such an enthusiast car, you'd like to think that these drainage channels will have been cleared and the car is in perfect condition, just like Charlie's here. But this is why it's so critical to know as much as you can about the vehicle's history. If you're in the market, make sure you get a full, thorough pre-purchase inspection carried out, and go to redriven.com or hit the link down there to get a vehicle history check, because this will show you if there's any money owing on the car, if it's been written off, or even if it's stolen. But look, enough of the potential negatives with the exterior. Let's talk about positives with the exterior, and that means talking about the phenomenal looks. Now, if you don't go weak at the knees at the very sight of an RS6, I don't know who you are anymore. You've changed, and it's not for the better. It's obviously a known fact that fast wagons are the coolest cars in all of the world of automotive, but this one, for me, it's just a work of art from every angle. From directly in front, I love the angry headlights and the overall design. I especially love these blades because it makes it look like it's got fangs and just wants to eat up the road. And then from the back, it just looks so wide and chunky, like a sexy. And then from the side, like, yes, it's a wagon, but it's just so smooth and it just flows. But then there's all these wonderful contours, like along here and along here, so it just makes it all look so squat. Are you picking up the fact that I'm deeply in love with this car? Probably to a very unhealthy level. Anyway, when it comes to common issues and complaints inside, it does seem that there are, again, fewer reports of electronic issues in the RS6 than compared to the A6. Maybe this is because they just sold way less RS6s than A6s, but nevertheless, press every single button, try every function, and make sure it actually works, because heaven forbid if there's any water leaking issues going on. Actually, if you do want to see all of the common issues and what goes wrong with the regular A6, we have made a full review video of that car. The link is down below. However, a common A6 problem that some RS6 owners have reported are issues with the HVAC and air conditioning system. We're talking problems like the system not actually blowing the air that the temperature indicates, certain fan speeds not working, right up to the entire system just completely packing it in. We wouldn't say they're common issues with RS6s, but they have been reported. Now, some owners mentioned that fixing these problems, it was a really cheap and easy fix. Other owners mentioned that the entire dashboard has to come out of the car to get to the problem and fix it. That is going to be eye-wateringly expensive. Actually, just on the owners, we joined a whole bunch of owners groups and forums to do the research on this video, and I've got to say, what an awesome bunch of humans. If you're looking at buying one of these, or if you own one, join an owners group, especially rs246.com and audizine.com. The information on those forums is just incredible. Now, aside from that, with the interior, it is supposed to be a practical family car, but being the flagship model of the A6 range, it means that Audi have used very, say, soft touch leathers, and apparently, according to some owners, the leather might not be the most resilient leather out there. However, in this car, nearly 75,000 Ks, about 6 years old, it's used on a regular basis. I think the wear and tear is fantastic. The leather is still super soft and supple, as is the Alcantara. Hardly any marks anywhere. Even the gloss carbon fiber, no scratches there. Steering wheel still has texture on it. I think wear and tear in this particular example is absolutely fantastic. Obviously, every RS6 is going to vary depending on its lifestyle. Now, while we're in here, let's talk about interior design. Every time I sit in one of these, my body does the same thing. It's like the interior design forces me just to stop and appreciate it, and then my body just kind of goes, whew. It's like an animal being satisfied deep inside me. This interior is just, perfect's a strong word, isn't it? But bloody hell, it's close. Even though this car is a previous generation, the feeling of quality is extreme. The way everything feels to touch, even the smell, it just exudes premium. Also, Buttons. The latest generation of RS6 has gone to all touch screens, and yes, it has haptic feedback and all that sort of stuff, but isn't that just trying to make a screen feel like a physical button? Just have a physical button instead. Also, using the buttons for the MMI system, okay, it's getting a little bit old, but it still, I think, feels completely intuitive and tactile to use. Buttons over touch screens every day. Actually, just on the MMI infotainment system, the early models prior to 2017, they missed out on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but don't stress because there are plenty of aftermarket options available to fit that tech to the older systems. Post 2017, that tech was available, not to mention the incredibly long list of standard features, but there are some highlights, like the fact that the standard 14-speaker Bose sound system is very, very good. The 15-speaker Bang & Olufsen system, it is up there with some of the best car stereos you are ever likely to hear. And it would want to be because it was a $12,000 option. And then we come to just sitting in it and the ergonomics. These seats are spectacular. They are the perfect balance between ultra comfortable yet totally supportive, and there's so much adjustability both to the steering wheel and the seating position. If you can't get comfortable in this car and just love the way it wraps around you, it's not the car's fault, there's something wrong with your body. Get that checked out. And then as far as actually using the car as a practical family car, how practical is it? Here we go. Pretty okay size glove box, not a standout there. Got a little storage bin just here. Door's a bit funny on that one. 2 cup holders with, I think it has to be the strongest little fingers of any cup holder I've ever experienced. If you've got a small pretentious coffee like the ones I love, like a double macchiato, they can just get stuck in there a little bit. The spot perfect for your phone just here, and another little storage bin next to it. Under the armrest there's even more storage there, good sized door bins, spot for your sunglasses up there, and also little hidden cubby holes under the seats. Also, while Audi did fit the RS6 with windscreen wipers, what they'll try to charge you for OEM replacement wiper blades is basically daylight robbery. Instead, why not upgrade the wiper blades and potentially save yourself a small fortune by hitting the Wipertech link down below. Look, we love these things so much, we use them on all of our cars. They're so easy to order online, they're easy to fit, they're going to be delivered to your door, and if you order a set for yourself via the link down there, you're going to get 15% off and free express shipping. Actually, as a thank you to Charlie for lending us my dream car, he's going to be going home with a free set of these bad boys. And if you want a set for free and you've got a cool car and you live in Sydney or Newcastle or somewhere close, let us know in the comments, or even better yet, message us on the socials and you'll get a set for free if we feature your car. Okay, then in the back seat, I'm exactly 2 centimeters taller than celebrity RS6 owner and Duke of Sussex, Prince Harry. Seriously, he actually owns one of these. This is in my driving position. Wow. Okay, great amount of knee room, great amount of foot room. The seats are bolstered, so not only is it incredibly comfortable, but it's also supportive in case you want to scare your friends. Glass house is good, panoramic roof gives it more light so it doesn't feel claustrophobic back here, even though everything's dark. Amazing back seats, love this location. As far as practicality and features go, air vents, climate control, power outlets just here. You've got door bins, you've got, I think that's a spot for cigarette butts. I feel like it's an ashtray of some sort, but it's removable, which should be out of your life. Pull down armrest, which has awesome little funky flip out cup holders like that. Then under here, you've got a spot for your official Audi first aid kit or whatever else you want to keep in there. Oh, also air vents here and privacy blinds. And then in the boot, obviously another area that the RS6 shines, this level of practicality. There's so much room for activities back here. In fact, this thing has 15 litres more cargo space in the back than an Audi Q5. Pop the seats down and it's 130 litres more. So don't go claiming that you need to buy an SUV for practicality. This is more practical, unless you look at an Audi Q7, but we're going to ignore that for now. Anyway, there are also little hidey cubby hole areas all through this cargo bay as well. Okay, what are the common issues and complaints you need to watch out for when it comes to the driving experience? There are really only 2 big ones. The first thing to watch out for is if the car, when you're coming to a stop, if the car feels like it wants to lurch forward, or if you're pulling away, especially on an incline, and it's really hard to get the car to move away smoothly, that could be an issue with some of the running gear. Maybe don't buy that RS6. And the second big complaint, actually, you know what? We're going to cover off the second big complaint in a second. Let's do the positives and highlights first. The RS6 in standard form is an outrageously fast car. We're talking 0 to 100 in less than 4 seconds. That's supercar fast. However, this particular RS6, it's not standard. Charlie has had the engine massaged a little bit, and to give you an idea of what we're dealing with here, on its first ever quarter mile run, it ran a 10.77. That is about this much slower than a LaFerrari. That means we're dealing with a practical station wagon that has hypercar levels of acceleration performance. And because of that, it just sheds weight and size. It honestly, it feels as nimble to drive as a Golf GTI. And also, even though it is based on an Audi A6 Avant, it feels like they've spent thousands of hours longer calibrating all of the driving experience in this than they have in a standard A6. This feels, at normal, sensible, around town speeds, this feels more special. The steering, the pedal feel, everything, it feels more refined. It's so incredibly impressive. It's even easy to see out of, and it's a big car, but it's really easy to judge all the parameters. So in traffic or parking it, it's a breeze. But the problem is we do have to talk about the second negative when it comes to the driving experience. And that's simply that here in Australia, this thing is too fast. The second you flex that right foot, Jesus Christ, the whole world just blurs. You feel your organs squish into your spinal cord and your conscience is screaming at you, hey dickhead, stop doing that, you're gonna get us into trouble. So then you're left with this incredibly frustrating driving experience because you can't use the performance anywhere on Australian roads. I want to fall in love with this car, I really do, but you never get a chance to actually enjoy the process of accelerating because the minute you flex that right foot, you're into, well, there's the speed limit, like that. So it's all over and done with. You don't even have time to appreciate how amazing this thing is on Australian roads. And because of that, you just find yourself tootling around town with all of this potential performance that you can't use. It's like someone handing you $10 million and going, you can only spend about 15 cents of that. It's very frustrating. But luckily, when you are just tootling around town, it's just wonderful to drive, steering especially. Volkswagen products generally have this horrible dead inside, no feel to the steering, but this doesn't. There's nuance to it. I love it, but then I can't fall in love with it. And then add on to that the concern that if something mechanically went wrong, what the hell is that going to cost you? Actually, I can't answer that question because I'm not a qualified mechanic, but you know who can answer it? It's Jim, because he is.
Mechanically speaking, they're not considered unreliable, but there is a lot to go wrong. Some of the smaller stuff you might see are problems with ignition coils and spark plugs. Pretty common for most cars though. They can have some air oil separator or PCV complications. It is a very complex system. They can leak, they can cause a vacuum leak or they can cause a boost leak, which usually causes air-fuel ratio complications. That actually is a pretty common problem on these. The cooling system on these, it is very complex. There's pumps and pipes and fittings all over the place. They can have leaks from the thermostat housing and the water pump. Now the water pump on these is at the front of the engine, although access is an issue. So if it leaks, it's about a 4 or 5 hour job to change it. Oil leaks, they can have oil leaks from the timing cover and some of the fittings around the turbo as well. And the rear main oil seal on occasions can leak too. Now the turbos on these, they are known for failing. Now the problem here is the oil supply line that goes to it has a screen in it which is designed to stop carbon and oil particulates going up into the turbo and wearing it prematurely. The problem is that screen blocks up and actually starves the turbo of oil and causes turbo failure. Now there are some recalls from Audi that actually fix this. There are also kits available where the screen is relocated to a more accessible place, so the screen becomes a serviceable item. In some cases, some people pull it apart and choose to leave the screen out altogether, which is okay. A lot of cars don't have screens, so that seems to work as well. The problem is those screens are right down in the middle of the hot V, underneath the turbo, underneath all the exhaust components and the breather components, and they're hard to get at. So often they're completely neglected. Now engine mounts on these, they're active engine mounts, they are prone to failure as well, and they are quite expensive. Good thing is there's a whole bunch of upgraded engine mounts you can put in, which typically last much longer than the factory ones. Now the fuel system on these, the high pressure fuel pump, not a hugely common issue, but well, there's two of them I should say. They occasionally fail, again, not a hugely common problem. Another issue with the fuel system is injector failure. Although, thankfully not hugely common, because to change the injectors on these, you need to take the engine out. One injector, I think the going price is about $900 per injector, so if you want to do all 8 of them, that's obviously engine out, which is about a 20-hour round trip, so you can do the maths there. Extremely expensive to do that. Now the timing chains on these, now they're not known as a common problem in these cars, but I should say these are a performance car and not your typical daily driver. So a lot of them don't have really high mileage. Now other Audis that use this type of V8 that have higher mileage, they can have timing chain issues. Now I should say there are 4 different timing chains. Each of them have their own gears, guides and tensioners, and there's a lot to go wrong in there. Should you hear it rattling, you should act fast and have it fixed straight away. The problem here is, like a lot of Euro stuff, the chains are at the back of the engine, and to fix it you've got to take the engine out, or drop it out basically, along with the subframe and the transmission and the whole lot. Again, 20 odd hour round trip just to get the whole lot in and out, plus the labour involved with doing the timing chain. So you can imagine it is just incredibly expensive to do. Now I've spoken about these V8s before. They are probably, if not definitely, the most complicated domestic engine in any car you can get. So should anything go wrong, it's going to be a nightmare. Now the driveline in these, the transmission in these is the ZF 8HP, which is in dozens and dozens of cars used by a whole bunch of different manufacturers. That is an excellent gearbox. It is very strong, and if serviced, is unlikely to have issues. Now, some manufacturers that use these gearboxes suggest they're filled for life and you don't need to service it. Thankfully, Audi have half a brain and they recommend servicing at least every 60,000 Ks. Now, I would recommend, if you're launching it or doing track days, or if it's modified, I'd be changing that oil probably every 20,000 Ks. And you absolutely should do the pan, or that's the integrated filter, and I would recommend using ZF oil too. Similar story with the rest of the driveline, just service it on time. Again, if you're tracking it, do it more frequently. Keep an eye on the tail shaft bolts, they tend to break. And also keep an eye on the tail shaft centre bearing. The mount there, the rubber mount just flogs out and the whole thing just shakes about everywhere. There are upgrades available for that. Now these things are a pretty popular platform for tuners. They are capable of immense power, it's actually incredible. But it's also, it should be said that any modification you do chasing power will make the thing less reliable. That's just how it is. Now, as Adam alluded to, our test car is tuned, and shout out to Charlie, the owner of that car. He actually does take that to the track and push its limits, which is great to see. But if you're buying one of these and tuning it and not taking it to the track, well, what the bloody hell are you doing? For me, even though there's a fairly long list of what could go wrong, I bloody love these things and I would have one in a heartbeat. But remember, I'm a mechanic and I can fix it myself.
Now, if you are still genuinely interested in buying an RS6, it is really important to consider the competition. Sticking with all-wheel drive twin-turbo V8 power and great practicality, you have the Porsche Panamera Turbo or its twin under-the-skin Audi RS7. Drop a couple of cylinders and you have the Alpina B3 Touring or AMG E43 Estate, or you could maybe just sneak into an M3 Touring, but that'll ask a pretty decent premium over the RS6. Opt for rear-wheel drive and that opens up the wagon options of the AMG C63 or HSV R8 Tourer. And obviously there's a whole bunch of performance SUVs that tick a lot of these boxes, but let's be honest, even the very best SUVs, they can't match this for the cool factor. Also, another area where it's critical to consider the competition is if you're looking for finance. Hit the driver link below and they will source you the very best finance packages from loads of different lenders. The entire application process is easy, fast and completely free, and not only will it have no impact on your credit score, you can have the cash in your account in no time. The thing is though, and you have no idea how much this hurts me to say, we're not sure if you should buy an RS6 in the first place. As utterly brilliant as these cars can be, the cost of maintenance and upkeep is extreme to say the least, let alone what you might be up for if anything seriously goes wrong with it. Then consider the incredible depreciation, which, if previous iterations are anything to go by, doesn't seem to slow down a whole lot as they age. And obviously its performance credentials are absolutely incredible, but realistically, how often can you stretch its legs on public roads? So that means having to take it to a racetrack to witness its potential. But we're talking about a 2.5 ton station wagon here. Pushing it hard around a circuit is going to chew through the consumables at an extremely expensive rate. Which leaves us with what should be an incredibly sensible performance car that actually isn't all that sensible at all. Look, if you're in the financial position to justify the ongoing expenses here and you're an enormous fan just as I am and you found a perfectly maintained example, yes, absolutely, you should buy one. And please keep it at its best, keep it on the roads because this is an iconic car. In fact, loads of the owners that we spoke to mentioned to us that despite the crazy running costs, this is arguably the best car they've ever owned. The problem is, but if it were my money, I would be buying something like a used Lexus RX hybrid for the boring, sensible stuff, and maybe one of these for the performance stuff, because that is a true performance car. The Lexus is a great, sensible, practical car, and chances are, if you buy both of those, you're gonna have money left over instead of buying one of these. Is that a smarter way to go, or am I just being a complete idiot? Let us know in the comments. See you next time. Now, if you are still genuinely interested in